Hi, I'm Zach. I'm going to be doing the video topic analysis for the November-December public forum topic. This is the first time ever that the November and the December topic have been the same, and I think it's for good reason. This topic is an extremely good topic because it is narrow enough to make sure that debaters don't go too far out from the core of the debate, but at the same time it's complex enough that it offers the opportunity to create very, very nuanced and very, very strategic arguments. So this is a very good topic for these 2 months. But the thing about these 2 months is that independent of the fact that they're now combined into one topic, each one is already a very challenging month in terms of competition. In November, we see Glenbrooks, which is by far one of the hardest tournaments of the first semester. And then in December, they have big tournaments as well, such as GMU and Princeton. So it's extremely important, especially on this topic, to have the best arguments possible. So I highly, highly recommend looking to the actual champions brief. They go far more in depth on many, many more arguments than I have the opportunity to cover in this short video. And you will get the perspectives of many other great former debaters in their written topic analyses. I highly recommend it. It's an extremely good tool, not only for learning about this topic, but for learning about argument construction in general. There's some great tips and tricks in there. With that said, for the remainder of this video, I'm going to go into the topic itself. I'm going to first do an overview of the topic, and I'm going to explain basically what's going on here. Why are we debating this, and why does it matter, and what are the basic pieces of information you need to know. Then I'm going to go into the arguments that I believe are the best for both the pro and the con, and then how to weigh them and how to just strategically implement them in the round. With that said, let's talk about the topic. So the topic is asking us whether or not it's a good idea for the United States to regulate the prices of drugs. In the vast majority of developed countries, they already do this. And the way that they do it is they have a government agency or organization that negotiates a price with pharmaceutical companies. Basically what happens is that the agency does independent research about the value that the drug provides to the society, and they see how good the drug is, whether or not it's worth bringing onto the market at all, what advantage it provides over drugs that already exist on the market, etc., etc. Furthermore, they do research into the affordability of the drug. Who is going to be buying the drug? How much can they pay for it? And then, with the number in mind, they go to pharmaceutical companies and they negotiate for a price that they both agree to. The thing about this process is that it's not a huge blanket statement where the government just says, this is the price of the drug and that's it. It's an open process. It's an open dialogue between the government and the companies, which means that they're not really being forced to do anything. So, in the United States, there is no such regulation, which is why we have this topic. And I think it's especially coming up now because the prices of drugs recently have been skyrocketing. And the reason for this is that the demand for drugs is essentially inelastic, which means that while the prices and the supply can change, the demand is always infinitely high. Because for people who need these drugs, there's no way out of it. Their demand is inelastically to infinity, because if they don't get that drug, they are going to die, or at least suffer to a very significant degree. This means that pharmaceutical companies have free rein to charge as much money as possible because they know that people are going to pay for it. So, why do pharmaceutical companies charge so much money? Why do they choose to do this, given that they can? You know, a lot of people might not do that because they know that the harms are pretty significant, that some people might not be able to afford the medicine, or that even if they can, it provides a significant burden for them and their families. So why do they do it? Well, there's two really big reasons why. The first is that, they're a company just like any other. They have a profit incentive, and they want to make sure they can increase their margins as much as possible. But the explanation that they give is that they need the money in order to conduct innovation. They need the money in order to do more research into more drugs. And for many of these drugs, the market is so niche and so small that the only way they could even make profit is by charging an insane amount of money, because they know that from the get-go, their pool of possible buyers is already so small. and the amount of research that's required to go into these drugs is so high that in order to make up for that lost capital, they must charge more money. So why don't we have regulations in the United States to solve this problem? Well, a big reason is the pharmaceutical lobby. They funnel billions of dollars into ads and to talking to congressmen in order to make sure that they can get people on their side so that they don't change the prices. That being said, I don't want to paint a picture of this situation as being entirely corrupt, right? Obviously, there are good and bad reasons to having high drug prices. That's why we have this topic, and indeed, it's a very even-keeled topic with even-sided topic. Where you can make very good arguments on both sides. So let's get into that. On both sides, when you're thinking about the arguments, the most important thing to think about is the effects that a change in price up the supply chain might have on the rest of the market. What do I mean by this? Well, there are lots of people who buy medicine, lots of organizations, companies, agents that buy medicine. Each one of these agents that's in the market is going to have their behavior change when the price of the drug changes. So basically, in order to see what the effect of a change in price is, you need to see the people who are buying the medicine and the people who are directly affected by the changes in price. And then from there, what do they do in response? And then so on and so forth until you get to an impact. That's one type of argument. Another type of argument is possibly externalities that happen as a result of changes in prices that don't necessarily have to do with the market. These arguments include things like political backlash, where maybe there will be fewer regulations in other areas in order to compensate for the fact that there are going to be lower prices. So let's get into the pro specifics. High drug prices most simply means that patients won't be able to afford these drugs, right? When prices are too high and people don't have enough money to provide the upfront capital that's necessary to afford these drugs, what happens is that they either suffer or they die as a result of not having these life-saving medications. A big response to this is that there are generic drugs that are available that are equally as good as the drugs that are provided by big pharmaceutical companies. A really easy way to respond to this response is that the advantage that generics have on the market is their ability to charge a lower price. So when the prices of the original drugs go down, the comparative advantage of the generic drug also decreases unless they reduce their price. So what this means is that if the prices of normal drugs charged by pharmaceutical companies goes down, the prices of generics will follow. This means that you can easily respond to this response by saying, well, yes, maybe right now a larger number of people are able to afford these drugs than we might think, because the people who buy directly from the company are not necessarily representative of all the people who are receiving this type of medication. But that doesn't mean that more people in general who buy generics and also buy from the company it doesn't mean that now there is even a larger pool of people who are able to afford it when the prices of generics goes down in the future. That's a really big impact. And it's a way to make your argument more nuanced. However, the thing about these types of arguments is that most people don't buy drugs directly from Pfizer Pharmaceuticals. Mostly they get it through a middleman. The main buyers of drugs are places like hospitals, insurance companies, maybe the government. And when the prices go up for drugs, these actors change the way that they act and the way that the people ultimately interact with their medical expenses and with the medical process in general. So with hospitals, for example, if they have to pay more money for a drug, this means a few things. It means that A, they free up more capital, which means that they can invest in other parts of the hospital to make sure that they run more smoothly. They can pay their nurses more money so they're able to provide better care. They're able to hire more specialized professionals, which means that they themselves can conduct more research. Or B, if they have to pay less money for drugs, this means that they can charge less in general if they're already running at optimal levels for the people who come in to the hospital and receive a service. This means that maybe the prices of hospitals might go down and hospital bills might decrease if we see a regulation on the prices of drugs. When it comes to insurance companies, it's basically the same effect. When they have more money because they don't have to spend as much money on drugs, it means that they're able to, increase the efficiency of the company itself, but it also means that they're able to charge lower premiums and increase deductibles. So I think on this topic, I just want to make a pause right there. There is going to be a lot of arguments probably about insurance. And I just want to clarify the two different parts of insurance that are probably the most important things to understand. One, there's the deductible and the premium. So the deductible is how much the insurance company is willing to pay before you have to start paying. So ideally, a patient has the highest possible deductible because this means that the insurance company is willing to shell out more money before they have to start dipping into their own pockets of the patient. The premium is how much the patient pays every month for the insurance. So you want the lowest premium possible because you want to pay this little money. So you want a high deductible but low premium. The last actor that's really involved here is the government, and I'm sure there's other actors involved, but this is the last one that I'll touch on. So Obamacare might increase in price, and like the Affordable Care Act might become less expansive when they have to pay more money for drugs, and when the prices of hospital visits goes up, it becomes much more difficult for the government to be able to finance these kind of all-encompassing pieces of legislation that provide people with more medical care. Something to keep in mind when you start thinking about things like this, and when you start going further and further down the supply chain, is that the further down you go, the more you have to prove. The more actors that become involved, the more moving parts that you introduce into your argument. And generally, it makes your argument more complicated and harder to understand, in addition to making it easier for your opponents to respond, because if they take out any one of the links, then the whole argument falls apart. On the other hand, there is a huge advantage to this as well, because you get more nuanced and unique arguments the further down you go, which allow you to surprise your opponents. So let's get into the weighing for the pro. So on the pro, the main weighing is going to have to do with access over quality, right? It's really easy to do this because even if the quality of medicine goes up, it doesn't matter if no one is able to afford it and no one is able to actually get that medical care. Furthermore, it doesn't matter if medicines are better, if just general medical care across the board is harmed as a result of high prices because, hospitals provide more services or the prices of insurance goes up. So the weighing is very easy on that side. Let's go on to the other side. Let's talk about the con. The main argument that's going to be made on the con is an argument about innovation and research. So there are basically two reasons why lowering the price of medicine will reduce innovation and research. The first is that it decreases the incentive to do research. So if companies know that they are not able to charge as much money for medicine, then they're less likely to invest in the first place into researching a medicine because they know that they're not going to get that much out of it once they start to sell it. This decreases the incentive to ever put in the upfront costs that are necessary in order to find the medicines and then put them on the market, which means that we might see medicines that would have existed had the prices been higher just literally never come onto the market because the companies don't think it is in their interest in order to do so because there's not enough of a reward waiting at the end of the line. The second reason why decreases in prices might decrease innovation is that when you decrease prices, this means that companies have less money, which means that they have less capital to conduct research. Research costs a lot of money, and even if the incentive remains the same, if they simply don't have the means and the capital necessary to invest billions of dollars into finding a new drug, they just won't be able to, regardless of whether or not they wanted to. And a really important thing to consider here is that new drugs cost a lot of money to research. These are entirely new fields. They need to hire extremely expensive experts. They need highly expensive and cutting-edge research technology, equipment, everything costs a lot of money. So not having capital is actually quite significant when it comes to researching new medicines. So what types of research really is this? Let's get into that. It can fall into a few categories. We could be talking about new medicines for diseases that already have a treatment, right? It could be an improvement upon the medicine that already is on the market. It could be a new drug for a new disease that currently has no treatment whatsoever. Any of these are pretty significantly important, but the weighing becomes slightly different with each individual instance. So let's get into the weighing. The weighing on the pro, as we talked about, was access over innovation. The weighing on the con is going to be innovation over access. And the weighing here is pretty simple as well, which is that, one, you can weigh directly on the level of access. You can say that more innovation means that in the long run we see lower prices because it means that they're able to find more cost-effective ways in the long run of providing medicine, of also doing research, that this is a short-term impact. The impact of higher prices is very short-term because in the long run, once we realize how to do research more efficiently, we're then able to charge less money. And that wouldn't be possible in a world in which you hamstrung the market to a certain price point and never provide the opportunity to break out of that. The second way you can do, not on the same level of impact, is to say that even if it's true that a smaller percentage of people who have each disease are able to be treated because the percentage of people who have each disease who can be treated decreases when the number of people who can afford the medication decreases, if you simply increase the number of diseases that are being treated, overall you see more people who are now getting treatment than otherwise would have had treatment. So this means that in the long run you still see more people being benefited. Furthermore, the impact is almost infinite because the number of people who have a disease going into the long run could be any number from like 0 to infinity, because people will continue to have a disease unless there's a treatment for it. And if you stop it now and you develop a vaccine, then, well, you stop it altogether. So the weighing there is pretty good. So overall, this is a pretty fun topic with a lot of room for nitty-gritty warranting and really cool argumentation. There's so much more than I provided in this video, and you really need to think about it a lot more in order to come up with the best and even more arguments. This is just my input right now. If you want more arguments than what I had here, you should really get the Champion's Brief, because in there are not only numerous more arguments, but like I said, the insight of other debaters as well in their written topic analyses. So if you want more of this, I highly recommend that you buy the brief. Happy debating. I look forward to watching rounds.